Hi, I'm Faroz Khan from iTrack Recruitment, and welcome to the Low Code Podcast, where we're dedicated to increasing awareness and appreciation of the power of low code. In this podcast, we'll hear from developers about their career journeys and how low code has enabled them to achieve new levels of success and innovation. So let's go. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's nice to have you as a guest. Thank you for taking
No,
the
I,
time.
I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Have you done something like this before?
Only with customers,
Only
but
with customers, yeah, of
yeah, only
course.
with customers. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm excited to do this format.
Great. It'd be good to start with you giving a bit of a introduction about yourself for those who may not know who you are, where you're from.
Yeah. So Mark DeArmon, waving at you from my home office in Atlanta, Georgia. I've worked. My career has been kind of wearing a lot of different hats around um, product software companies, and I started out early in my journey with one that was a basically an open source billing platform. It was Portal software. They were gobbled up
Mm,
by Oracle, but
mm.
always always in pursuit of that disruptive product software
Yeah,
company. I landed into OutSystems almost 8 years ago, and so I've had a variety of roles there. I actually spent
yeah.
some time on the projects, working in the platform, leading
Nice.
programs and projects, so understanding what 5X development means and how to take
Yeah,
advantage
yeah.
of it. And so right now I'm a customer success manager working with about a number of different customers, helping them adopt the platform and accelerate their value. So
Mm. And eight years at OutSystems. Before you kind of joined OutSystems, like you said, you were working for other tech companies.
yes,
Had you,
yes.
and obviously, I'm guessing 8 years ago, low code probably wasn't the biggest in the US or well known. Were you aware of low code or OutSystems before you joined them?
That's a really interesting question. So I came to OutSystems from Backbase in Amsterdam.
Mm.
And before that I was managing development teams with traditional development,
Yeah, yeah,
approaches, hand coding and
yeah.
compiling, et cetera, et cetera. So um and Backbase has they're in the fintech space and got a platform, but it was kind of the last kind of step in my journey in terms of the slowness, the time it takes to
Yeah.
build really awesome apps by hand coding and hand compiling and everything that goes with it. So I just at that point was like I had seen low code is starting to emerge, and I said,
Yeah,
let me see if I can get involved at
yeah.
OutSystems. I think it looks really cool. I want to see if this is just a niche thing or
Mm-hmm.
if it's really real. And so I got on OutSystems, and my very first project was with one of our customers. They're out of Mexico. They're kind of like the FedEx of Mexico.
Yep.
And what we built in 3 months, my very first project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So for me immediately was for every other customer that I was working on, it was how do I help the customers understand how to go fast? Because
Yeah,
basically what I say is I realized very quickly that the traditional bottleneck of IT and developers that's been around for decades. I'm
yeah,
not a young spring chicken, so I been
yeah,
around for a while. That now has shifted to what I've been really working on is like you have to be able to create what you want to build at the same speed that it gets built,
yeah.
or it just shifts the bottleneck and you slow down. You still go on the same speed because you're not able to take advantage of that platform. So that's one thing that I learned early from that first project was how to help customers understand how to do that. And it's really around people and process. It's not
Mm.
the technology, it's the
Yeah,
people
yeah.
and process. And there's a lot of factors that go into success with the platform and what needs to be considered around that area. So
So when you joined OutSystems, you were kind of, I'd say, not skeptical and already kind of convinced that's the direction to go in.
yeah, well, so I was curious,
Yeah, okay.
and I didn't what I didn't expect was to have my mind blown. I thought
Yeah,
it was more like a cute niche product, and it
yeah,
wasn't at all.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
went, "Whoa,
yeah,
this is 8 years ago." I was like, "This is mind blowing. This has so much
yeah,
potential." So I always looked at it as it's what I say for us is the platform and OutSystems. It disrupts
Mm,
3 or 4 decades of traditional development because you're enabling the same outcome with mobile apps and web apps but you're making a developer go 5 times faster. And I've been on projects. And how do you make a developer go? What are the inputs to a developer going 5 times faster, creating the same code that you would do by hand? And those are the learnings that I went through, and those are part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
lessons and best practices that I help customers work through.
And being there for 8 years, can you tell us a bit about, obviously you've had various roles, but what's your current role entail
Uh,
at the moment?
yeah, I'm a customer success manager, and so I work with a variety of customers, both locally and globally, on making sure that they're adopting the platform. My entire purpose as a customer success manager is to make sure that our customers, OutSystems customers, my customers, are getting the absolute most out of the platform in terms of a value and impact to the organization, which is, like I said, it's not usually the platform, it's the people and process around it. How
Yeah.
do you drive it? And really, how do you drive the platform and its capability and then resulting enthusiasm and wanting to get involved in your organization? What needs to be in place? What needs to be planned? What needs to be monitored? Though it's all organizational change,
Mm, mm.
basically. That's the success.
And in your time there, what's the kind of, the growth kind of, obviously 8 years ago, the customer kind of landscape compared to now is
Oh, yeah,
much
yeah. So
greater.
Oh yeah, so 8 years ago, because the company's based in Portugal,
Yeah.
so they started out the roots in southern Portugal and kind of grew into
Mm,
Europe, and then they kind of swung over to the U.S. It was starting to when I got involved about eight
yeah.
years ago, and it's usually a little bit smaller customers
Mm,
or smaller entry points.
yeah.
It's what's been more of a hockey stick is into large enterprise
Yeah.
and large customers and programs of work, multiple GSIs. So we've expanded into our ecosystem has really been more broadly increased in terms of who we interact with, the strategies from an organization level in terms of aligning the platform to maybe a variety of tooling and technology
Mm,
internally and coming up with the strategy and how to implement that, which is again people and process around the platform.
yeah.
So
And from our perspective, even you know what we do, and in your time, and we've seen obviously the kind of size of customers who we see adopting OutSystems in the more
yes,
recent years are much, well-known companies, global companies.
yeah.
What do you think has caused that? Some people are sometimes say, obviously, you know, digital transformation, the pandemic made people speed up and things like that. What's your view on kind of why now? Do you think because the platform has evolved so much that it's really offering everything in one for these customers?
Yeah, I think it's a growth from the proof point that I went through, to be honest
Mm,
with you, of is this niche or is this real? So over, because the company's been around for 20 years,
yeah.
but from when I started, again, almost 8 years ago,
Mm,
there's been the inventory of success and applications and proof points of what you can build and the impact of it. You can't deny what you see. You can't deny when somebody says, "I built this in 4 weeks, and it
yeah.
looks awesome," or you built and deployed a mobile app in a few weeks, or if you're able to turn around new features in a matter of days and get feedback from your end users that can change and get it back in a couple of hours. That's real. And so when those stories and those proof points become commonplace, it
Mm,
drives interest. And of course, there's a
yeah.
marketing engine behind it, but you can't fake what's not real. So this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
very real, and this has this organic kind of interest and uptake.
And
That's just my personal opinion.
yeah, yeah. And when you're kind of speaking to, especially because you went through it yourself, you come from a traditional background to
Yeah.
then, mind blown. When you're speaking to customers that you're dealing with all the time, do you have kind of similar stories where they're like they can't believe how fast or things can get done compared to what they were doing in the past?
Ultimately, we get there if they're new
Mm,
in their journey,
mm.
that they're waiting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And they're
yeah.
always going to have this like moment, and that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where it can be a game changer. But you have to, when the customers buy the platform, they know they're buying, they believe it's possible. But
mm,
it's up until you build that first application, either through a partner or their own developers, and you see how fast you can do, and then you showcase it. And that's really one of the elements that I talk to customers about early in their journey is show what you're doing. And so if you can
yeah,
go and you build an application. It doesn't, if it's small, but making sure it's an application people can relate to internally,
Yeah.
and just showcase it, like laptop, show a demo,
Yeah.
whatever, and say, hey, we just built this in 8 weeks. And usually
Yeah.
is you'll get and I got one customer that had an avalanche of responses. Like, I have
Yeah.
10 applications, ideas I want to get involved in now. So
Yeah.
that's part of that, is like, once you get, you're like, wow, this is possible. The question is going to be, how do you organize around that? Right. Because generally it's,
Mm.
you start out with, I tell customers how to, your COEs and things like that, but
Mm.
how do you grow effectively? And this is where your first team should be business and developers and IT, of people that are all in. They want to make
Mm.
an impact in your organization. They want to figure out how to make this work for them. And that first team, improving that app and showcasing it, expect the inbound interest in a lot of ideas. And I have a project
Yeah.
for you kind of
Mm.
responses. And that first team should be teaching the second team. The
Yeah.
first team, the second team, through those small apps, remember, it's quick wins, then it can easily scale out. And coming up with, you need to anticipate success and plan for your backlog to be set up for continued development, release, showcasing, and the ability to ramp up other people and teach other people on how you as a
Yeah.
customer work around the platform, which is always a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make
And
sense?
yeah, it does. It does. And with obviously being part of so many customers and projects, is there one or two kind of very interesting projects you could kind of give us a bit of a, insight into that you've been involved in that have been really interesting?
Oh, yeah. One actually, the very first one
Mm.
was for a customer in Atlanta, and I'm going to keep the customer names off
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah, yeah, of
this
course.
is,
Yes.
but it was, I had been at the company 1 month, and I'll never forget it. I was in the room, and I actually wrote some user stories on this
Yeah.
project. I was on loan for this project, and it was basically a 4-week project. And I had um our what's called our technical lead. He was on the other
Mm.
side. His name was Vasco Grossman. And I'll never forget this. This is like the first month, and I'm in the room,
Yeah.
and I've written a bunch of user stories, and he's on the other line. He's in Portugal, and he's got a spreadsheet up, and we only have 2 sprints.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, here's all the user stories with the start of the 2-week sprint. Here's all the user stories that we're going to build and demo to you in 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there, I don't know anything. I just wrote a bunch of user stories, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, we're going to do this one, 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 this one. And I was sending him a message. I'm in the room.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm in the
yeah.
room. You can't say this, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks later, every single user story was built. And this was a custom application that this customer had these printers in a couple of different warehouses, and that they would spit out these bills of lading that would be
Mm.
slapped onto these containers to be shipped out. And so it
Yeah.
had a lot of information on it. And basically in 2 sprints from scratch, it was printing these labels that were placed on these containers with all the reporting
Wow.
around it in 2 sprints. And that's
Wow.
when I went, that was like,
Yeah.
whoa. And then, because that was a small application, as I learned
Mm.
at the time.
Yeah.
And then I went to, again, the FedEx Mexico, people would come up to their
Yeah.
stores and package, just
Yeah.
the same kind of concept. And they had this old IBM keyboard kind of thing. And it was
Mm.
real funny because the would actually just be moving through the screen, not looking at the screen. So they
Yeah.
knew how to
Okay.
manipulate from the keyboard. But they wanted to take the mobile point of sale, take a point of sale into the people online, make it easier and make that faster.
Mm.
So we basically started with drawing up the UX as day one.
Mm.
And about 3 or 4 months later, we had a mobile point of sale for national, international shipping, custom point of sale, hooking in SAP, built and ready to go from a development perspective. And it's now been rolled out into kiosks years later. But that building a custom point of sale, which yours companies just focus on that. They can't
Yeah.
build that, get that up first. We built and designed it in 3.5 months, 4 months.
Wow.
And that was just, that's when I stood back and said,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
game changer, right?
Yeah.
So that my entire demeanor and my focus and my engagement with customers, when I'd be brought on to run projects, would be, yes, we're going to deliver this app, but let me tell you something else you need to be
Mm.
aware of, because I want to see
Yeah.
you be successful with the platform. And I was always about teaching them and bringing them on board in the team much more deeper than
Sure.
we usually did, to make sure they could extend it and they could go to other teams internally. So I started doing that, from year one, and it's been,
Yeah.
been basically my mindset ever since.
Nice, nice.
So
And
I was always tweaking
yeah,
ideas and things to try. So every project I was testing different ways of working on the platform to
yeah,
figure out what worked for me. But
yeah,
that's really the concept is every customer, you need to tweak how you deliver software today traditionally. And then
yeah,
what do you change to take advantage of the platform? And it's going to be a journey. And that's what you learn through projects. You don't
yeah,
figure out day one.
yeah. Of course, it's the experience that you gain along the way, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
There's no such nobody walks in. We've had customers that built
yeah,
hundreds of applications and
yeah,
they deliver a new release every 12 hours. They just didn't start that on day one.
yeah, exactly,
It
exactly.
takes
Yeah,
you learn that over time, right?
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
about it's like I said, success with the platform is around organizational change, and one of the key success factors is of that I note for customers with the platform is the affinity for the cultural affinity for change management
mhm,
because you have to tweak your SDLC.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's a huge factor around this very disruptive technology,
yeah,
traditional development. So
yeah. And from obviously the various features that OutSystems have within the
mhm.
platform, and obviously we heard at the one conference all the stuff that's coming soon. In your time, what I like to ask everybody is, in your time with OutSystems, what have been some kind of key features that they've released that you've thought that's going to be a real game changer for my customers?
Recently, okay,
Recently, along your 8 years, when was there a
uh,
time where you thought, okay, like a lot of people, for example, say to me, mobile was one, reactive, things like that. So, and then some people mention the smaller things that they thought was really going to
yeah,
help their customers.
yeah. So I've got a couple of them, and it reflects that a lot of the features that we have, or not a lot, but some actually come from what we develop in the field for our professional services organization. For example, one of the key things I just got off a call with a customer talking about asking them, hey, do you use or do you know about app feedback?
Mm.
And you'd be 80% of people I talk to don't have never heard of app feedback.
Yeah,
And the original is called ECT, which is something change technology, all built in
yeah,
PS years and years and years ago.
yeah,
But basically allows you have this little icon that you can turn on in any environment to any user that you want. And it's an icon. And once you click on it, the user, think about your user, you're building applications for end users. These people are using your application to go do what they need to do every day. So they know what works, they know what
yeah,
doesn't work. They got ideas. Humans have ideas, basic concept. So the app feedback allows that user to click and anywhere on the screen, it'll do a call out and a point exactly to it. And they can type in anything they want, which
mm,
I use to say, this is a bug. I have an idea for another app. I have an idea another feature, or what about doing this? So it actually takes the development and design process and brings end users like right together. Because
mm,
when that is sent, when the user clicks send on that app feedback, the screenshot and their feedback exactly to the point on that screen goes right into development. So you can consume that, digest that, and get back to that user and say, that's a great idea. Oh,
yeah,
that's a bug we didn't capture. And then fix it quickly
yeah,
and then release it. And what I've seen is that when you do that, you'll get more of that behavior because that's not an experience that most end users have had
yeah,
historically. So they have feedback. And the other one is obviously was we all know that is AI Mentor Studio.
yes,
Was it was originally it was in the architecture dashboard, but it started out as trusted advisor years ago.
mm,
And the interesting thing, and people don't really know, is like it's AI, but what was the AI? And so I remember being working on my project teams in
yeah,
Lisbon. I'd go out there frequently to kind of work on
yeah,
these projects. And I remember in the office there'd be like 10 people in one of the glass
yeah,
workroom,
yeah,
and they'd
yeah,
be screaming at each other. And I didn't know at the time, but what they were arguing about passionately was what are the best practices for development. They were building the engine for Trusted Advisor, which through the years
yeah,
now is AI Mentor Studio. But the AI was actually a bunch of humans getting together
mm,
in Portugal to say, this is how you build, these are the best practices that you do. So we initially, when Trusted Advisor came out, we only used it for our projects and we pull it
yeah,
out, which I'm glad that it evolved into something that's
yeah,
more public and available because it's an
yeah,
awesome tool. So it's the number one
yeah,
tool that we have. So that's kind of, not people don't always tell that story because
yeah,
not a lot of people know that's the history
yeah,
of AI
yeah,
Mentor Studio. And to watch, I just happened to be there and ask why these guys were in there arguing, pulling
Yeah.
chairs at each other. True story,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
true story.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
Wow.
I'm very excited about what we're coming out with ODC
Yeah.
um and some folks have been heard about some new products there, but that
Yes.
ODC and everything that's going to be a game changer. That's going to take
Yeah.
if you think about what we came up but when this company was founded
Yeah.
20 years ago and the absolute game changer there. Now we're building out the next 20-year game changer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very exciting to be part of it. I'm very blessed to be part of it. So I just have fun and work with I love
Yeah.
working with customers. Love it.
Yeah. That's great. I can hear it in your voice. So definitely I can see the passion. And is there anything that, that hasn't been released yet that, or that you might hear this from customers that is, that isn't in the platform that, you think is needed or might be in the future?
Yeah, that's some of those items I think are on the roadmap for ODC.
Okay.
Not everything is really sexy to some people.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah, of
that
course.
automated regression testing is very, very, very sexy. And
Yeah.
so, but that, and so as we go from O11 to ODC, these are on the backlog. These are part of the things that we're going to be doing. So, though there's a lot of capabilities and it's all around automating the entire SDLC and making it
Mm,
easier to deploy. And that's where the ODC makes me very excited, specifically on auto
yeah,
scaling, like
yeah.
your infrastructures. That's huge. So
Mm.
that's an example because
Okay.
you want to be able we want to encourage people to build and build without
Yeah,
borders and constraints,
yeah.
and this is where the next generation is going to take us.
Okay. And someone who kind of deals with the customers, do you find usually when there's a new customer, let's say they've been using traditional and they've now decided to move to OutSystems, you may not know or you may hear of it. Do you ever have customers who their existing development team are reluctant to
Oh yeah.
switch to low code?
Yes.
And how are those challenges kind of faced?
Yeah, that's so you're going to depending on the size of the organization and the where they're spread out and
Mm,
there's that's just a common reality, and it comes
yeah,
down to the cultural affinity for change. And so what I've learned is that you're going to run into some of that. And there's sometimes a little bit of fear about what
mm,
OutSystems is. And what I tell developers that are if and I've been in rooms, I've actually said this to them that traditional code is never going to go away ever.
yeah,
We're just kind of making this piece of it much more faster. So it's never going to go away. So as a developer, you really have you really have two options. You can choose to handwrite code because you like it, that's what you want to do, or you can deliver features to your end users much more quickly and deliver value to them. I don't care. Pick one.
yeah, yeah,
So that's the bottom line. And that I the so to when we get involved with our customers, this is where finding those people that want to kind of do the latter one
yeah,
and get involved in it and see the results. And what I've seen in the customers is that once you build when you talk and build and showcasing applications for the business, yes, that's one thing, it drives demand. But
mm,
you can do the same thing and pivot that to the internal IT organization and say, this is what I was able to do as a tech lead, an architect, a UX designer, a front end developer, whatever, and say,
yeah,
yes, this was fun. I look what I built, and you'd be surprised at how often that brings in developers. And this is where the first team, the first group teaching the second group internally in that
yeah,
organization is so important. It just helps accelerate the adoption of the platform. Sometimes it's organically,
yeah,
but it all comes down to people and their sentiment and the culture of the organization
mm,
and how well the organization is integrated and works together. A lot of that is just we can't control it, but we try to influence it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you feel in the US the developer community is growing? I
Oh yeah.
obviously we can see the customer side is growing just from the names and things like that. Do you think the developer side is kind of growing and going in the right direction?
It is, and so our developer relations team has got some great ideas. We expect that to continue. So we got a
Mm.
good team there. Yes,
Yeah, I think when I was in Denver for the conference, Miguel Baltazar, when he did
yes,
the closing speech, he said, there's big plans for the US to really
yes. There are big
grow the
plans for the U.S.
community. It's in
Yeah, yeah,
the next year or so. So that's good to hear. And with kind of these clients that you're working with, is there ever kind of any challenges that kind of they might bring to you that, it's kind of something they've had in the past with traditional, and they've also got it, with low code, and there's kind
Oh,
of,
yeah.
is there something like that that, that they have, and they're trying to like, well, I thought this was going to fix this and it hasn't.
Yeah, this is a great question. So I'm telling you things that if a customer brings that up, I say,
Yeah.
listen, you have an SDLC process. Every customer does. It's
Yeah.
been there for a while. And if you just drop in OutSystems and just and replace the development piece and don't change anything else, it's not going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
still going to go the same speed.
Yeah.
So you have to think about, and this is where the projects are so important. Is yes, the first projects are to prove the technology, but
Mm,
they're also to figure out for your customers, where do we change? What
yeah.
do we change first to take advantage of it? And one of the biggest things I start working with customers on is the initial thing is that it's a basis or a premise that developers don't innovate per se. They execute on innovation. Generally speaking, what needs to get built, innovation, the ideas, the backlog, all comes from business units as a high level. So if you're a developer and you're really good, you can build a web app or mobile app in a couple of weeks. The business has to learn how to generate requirements at a rate that can support that speed. That's always a huge learning for customers to say, hey, we need to change how we do our backlog and design requirements so that we're giving it to the developer to build something. And when I'm running a project, everything's like, we're going to build a feature in 6 hours or less. And that's
Mm,
the small batch mindset. So how do you got to get to that point? You got to tweak how you do projects generally to be successful. But again,
yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. You just got to figure out how to do it. And every customer is different. But generally speaking, um, the release management, how often you release, how often you want to release, where do you test, how do you test? And the other thing for us is when I'm talking to customers, I said the first few projects, I want you to manually test like you do. And because you'll find out that the speed at which you're going faster and faster and faster puts pressure on requirements and testing. So gives you a perspective of, okay, where do we in the future start looking at automated testing of
Mm,
UIs and backends and regression testing and start building a strategy around that because you want to be able to continue to build fast, but have tests run in the background that if something major breaks that cannot break or is really bad, that you fix it, you capture it, you identify it early in the development process because you don't have enough, never have enough humans to go at
yeah.
5 times testing speed now. If it's hard now, it's going to be harder going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And you've been around the tech industry for a while.
Yeah.
You've been around the block, from and you've obviously got your own network of people that you've met along the years. And when you first started with OutSystems, did you kind of have people in your network who were like, what's that, or what's low code, compared to where
Yeah.
now I think OutSystems and low code, the term itself is a lot well known. Did you find when
Yes.
you kind of started in the early days, a lot of people like, what's low code and what's
Yes.
OutSystems?
100%. What is low code? So it's definitely was this niche thing, but now it's I the just wearing a shirt or
Hmm.
something in my laptop or bag, laptop
Yeah.
bag in an airport. People tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I've heard about OutSystems,"
Ah,
that kind of
nice.
thing, or
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know OutSystems, or I'm
yeah,
a
yeah,
customer. So
yeah.
it's really been cool to see that
Yeah, that's cool.
experience.
Yeah, that is really cool, actually. Yeah. I think that we find, I think in Europe, it's probably it was known a lot earlier compared to,
Yes,
like you said, because it started here. Like we had,
started there.
when we were coming
Yep.
back from Lisbon, I've got an OutSystems backpack. And obviously there was a lot of people from the conference at Lisbon Airport also going back, so
Yeah.
it was quite strange I've had that bag for a number of years and I haven't had that when we first
Yes.
started doing low code recruitment. So it's
Yeah.
good to
Yeah.
see how it's great to see how it's really grown. And also just the developer community, the all the kind of it's like just doing you've been to most of them,
Yes.
the in-person events again, I think is
Oh, so
I'm
great.
interested to see your opinion. Obviously I think for someone who's always dealing with customers, it must be so much better to be in person again rather than always on video calls.
Yeah, it's only because the platform is so disruptive.
Mm.
And so disruption is really, it's one of the things that I say is that at the end of the day, software development is a human process. It's 100% human process. A human's collaborating with another
Yeah.
human. They're doing something. It's a human process. So humans are animals where that we like to be interacted in the same place. So, and you can cover so much more when you're in a room and you can pivot to a whiteboard or pivot to a screen and you can change dynamically the topics with people in the room and ask questions, interrupt. And there's so much going on visually
Mm.
that you can't do in this, 4 inch by 4 inch screen that we're looking
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult to really brainstorm, compare
Yeah.
notes, what if, how are we going to go there,
Mm.
even talk about best practices on projects is really difficult to do that or challenging, I should say, on Zoom. And so I always like to, if my customers are open to it, hey, let's get together on a regular basis and
Yeah.
talk about where you are, what are your challenges, best practices. And it's really around, as I'm working with the early in the journey, I don't dump everything on them at one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm giving them what they need right now to see,
Yeah.
make sure that sinks in. Okay, now we're
Mm.
ready for the next level of maturity and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Because I want to get to the point where they're, developing and delivering applications every month and
Yeah.
deploying them. And it's not about the application. Like we built an app
Mm.
does this. Is like we just delivered 40 applications. Nobody cares about what the
Yeah.
app
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about volume,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What does the
Exactly.
ROI, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what's important.
Yeah.
So
And I'm guessing your goal is obviously handhold and push them in the right direction, to make sure they're getting the most out of the platform.
exactly. And
Yeah.
there's not a set way to do this. Every
Mm.
customer's got different people, different
Different.
culture, and different strategy. Every customer's different. Every single customer I've worked with, there's no two that are alike. So you have to kind of understand where they're going and the people you're talking to. And sometimes the people change. So
Mm.
you always have to adapt to where your customer is in the journey and what their level of experience is and success and challenges, and always be adapting how I'm working with them based upon the outcome that I want for them, which is absolute adoption of the platform, and they're creating an amazing value train with this platform.
Yeah, yeah. And have you found, because obviously there's this thing where if you use low code, you don't need such a large development team versus
Ah,
traditional,
that's
right? So obviously
yeah,
depending on the customer size, have you
yes,
obviously you probably get to see that firsthand.
yes. That's a great question. So I sometimes I'll start working with customers early in the journey, and I remember this was a conversation with the team or the squad. We had about 8 or 10 developers on it
Wow.
and in one team. And they said, this is the team we're going to take into our first project in OutSystems. I went, time out.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah,
uh, let me explain a little bit. I said, in OutSystems, I ran projects, so I'm not making this up, is a simple application for a web, a mobile app you can do in a couple of weeks. That's one developer. One developer can do all that. If it's a medium complex application, let's say 3 or 4 months, it's two developers, and really large is 3 or 4. But it's not about getting people, it's just dividing all the work that needs to be done and collaborating. So if this particular instance is that mindset shift away from the historical, traditional development. I said, listen, if you've got 8 to 10 developers that you can put on OutSystems, you've got 5 projects
yeah,
that you can
yeah,
build. So where are the projects? Are they ready? And that's just, I try
yeah,
to have that conversation if that's the case early, so they can start planning. We start talking about the backlog, the inbound into the hyper productivity that you get with the platform. And so having, as the typical team is 2 developers who are really good
yeah,
and 2 BA people that
yeah.
use the stories. It's a one-to-one relationship between a BA and
Mm,
developer. That's the lowest kind of common denominator
mm.
of awesome productivity, is one developer knows what they want or knows what they're building, and a BA who knows what they want to get built from a visual and overall
Yeah, yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
Partnering
yeah.
those two together and building from it, that's the foundation.
Mm, mm. And what about similar to that, but like you said, the one developer, one BA. Obviously,
Yeah.
some teams will be set up with a front end, a back end, a
Yes.
UX, UI.
Yeah.
Do they struggle with that kind of transition as well?
Sometimes, like one that's like for this UX is, and it's one of the concepts that I started experimenting with. Well, a couple like you had Menno Kramer
Yeah.
on a few weeks ago,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
I
yeah,
did.
so
Yeah.
he and we experimented. A lot of this came from some of the stuff that he and I were working on years ago when we
Yeah.
worked on projects together, and a lot of it was around the challenge that it's, it's hard to find UX people, right? And
Yes.
they're hard to scale in most organizations. You need them because their brains are so good at
Yeah.
creating great user experiences. So how do you scale that? So what we were experimenting with is, if you have one UX designer, one, let's say, lifestyle guide or theme across multiple applications, it's the same look and feel and the widgets that you
Mm.
use. This UX designer shouldn't have to do all the screens and Figma, whatever,
Yeah.
everyone. That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. As long as you got the base theme done, it's having BAs or those who write user stories be able to do the mock-ups just on the back of a piece of paper. As long as the developer
Mm.
understands what they need to do, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
make it be back of a napkin, literally. I've
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
used it. I've done
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
handed it to the developer, and it got built
Yeah.
in a day. But the point is that the UX having a number of projects and having somebody being able to interact with them on changes or enhancements to the screen's reflection of the existing theme, that's how you scale UX. And I would say that a good UX designer can actually have their hands on and run about 8 projects at one time if there's a corresponding individual that's able to take their themes and tweak them a bit and bounce
Yeah.
ideas back and forth,
Yeah.
and they hand that over to the developer as part of that process.
Mm.
That's part of the learnings that
Yeah.
that Nan and I went through. We kind of perfected a method to do it, but that's how you do it. So if you think that, hey, you have one UX designer, one project, that's you're thinking too narrowly
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
go. And so it's a part-time perspective. Think about, there's
Yeah.
full-time roles in a project and there's part-time roles.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of the ODC and all these things
Yeah,
coming up. What's your
yeah.
kind of overall view on low code as a whole in the future, kind of, the direction we're going in? Obviously there's all these stats and data around that
Yeah.
get kind of reported. What's your kind of personal view on that?
Yeah, and we're early in this kind of whole AI thing. I go back to, there's still, software is still very humanistic in
Yeah.
nature. We're coming out with something next year, and some people have been to the conference, you know what it is. I'm not going to say the
Yes.
name here, right?
Yes, yes, I do.
It's and again, sometimes the challenges are, figuring out what you want, right?
Mm.
With the because you get built so fast, be able
Yeah.
to ideate so fast. So we've got some capabilities coming out next year that's going to allow the application to be kind of think about all the different application types. Let's say it's a workflow, whatever, that you can
Mm.
spin through a lot of different variances, a lot of different varieties of the application, where it will suggest features or capabilities to the user who's actually interacting with it. Now, the cool thing is that this could be in the developer's hands or a technical business unit, but allows the ideation that is historical, not just in OutSystems, but going
Mm.
back into traditional development, to be more visual and interactive, so that the output is an application that's already ready to go. So
Mm.
I think the influences are really exciting for me, is addressing the gap of what's possible and getting things ready to build. An idea, let's say you want to have, hey, here's 10 applications ready to go. 10 different applications. They're ready to go and get built. They're already ready to go in OutSystems in development. We just got to prioritize which developers to go with.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a game changer. And
Yeah.
not just, hey, here's the screens, or here's the
Yeah.
project, or here's the approval project. This is in the development environment, ready to go. Do we say go? And that's an acceleration
Yeah.
that's just off the impacts of how that will be felt. I think are not yet. Obviously we're early, but
Yeah.
that's very, very exciting to me.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
exciting.
I think the future is definitely exciting for even you see the developers are really like keen and looking forward to what's to come.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
the developer productivity is going to be even more off the charts with
Yeah.
what we're coming out with. So it's very fun to be involved in this kind of disruption
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
software. So
Yeah. And one thing I like to ask kind of all our guests is, and you may have had these conversations with people, is, we like to kind of ask, what's your kind of message to those who kind of are not convinced by low code still? And, you touched on it earlier with the traditional kind of coding thing. But, you're someone who also may not only be speaking to developers, but speaking to customers all the time. What's your
yeah,
kind of message to those who are not kind of convinced or don't really believe in the capability of low code?
yeah, I would say just be open to it. Look at the use cases that we have, the developer community, and it and it's the stories that I tell And my experiences there, it's really simple, and you just got to be able to jump in because, like I said, this not a technology issue.
Yeah.
It's a people and process. And if you have ideas that are sitting on the shelf, or if you have ideas that could be game changers, this is a platform that's ripe for you to use to take advantage of the ideas that you have. Um, I typically haven't had that many conversations
Mm.
with people directly. You say I'm not a big fan
Yeah, yeah,
of low code, or I'm not a big fan of OutSystems, because usually it's another issue going
yeah,
on. But I talk about what's possible, and I like to point to what works and examples. And so
yeah.
I what's interesting is that customers love to hear about stories of other customers. And so, and what they went through. So all these use cases that we have, all these success stories that are all publicly available on our website, there's a
Mm.
story behind every one of
Yeah,
them.
there is. Yeah,
Every one of them. What did the customer learn? What was their journey like? How did they get to this where they're actually publishing and making publicly available
yeah,
their success story?
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
journey in that. So
yeah,
every customer has gone through change. Every customer is going to have some. Is this really what
yeah,
we
yeah,
need to
yeah,
get
yeah,
into? And it's amazing what happens when we have 3,000 customers. All it's awesome to be part of.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's amazing.
yeah.
And aside from obviously your OutSystems role, is there anything kind of any projects or any other things you're involved in
Outside of OutSystems,
outside of your work? Anything else you're involved in?
Um, no, no, just basically, I'm always, I consider myself an evangelist.
Yeah.
So, I do enjoy going to some of the marketing or sales events that
Okay.
we have. It's typically just, typical industry or
Hmm.
marketing event salespeople there, or
Yeah.
solution architects are there. I enjoy going to those and interacting with the customers. Anybody's interested in OutSystems, I immediately just glom onto them and
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
out what
Yeah.
they know. And,
Yeah.
I have the same
Yeah. You're ready.
conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how I'm talking to you, is how I talk to customers that are experienced for years,
Hmm.
new in their journey. I don't know anything about OutSystems.
Yeah.
It's the same content. I just
Yeah.
tweak it and adapt it to
Yeah.
who I'm talking to and their level of knowledge of what OutSystems is or
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
It's the same. I don't change what I say to anybody.
Yeah.
And anybody,
Yeah.
if you talk to anybody in OutSystems or some of my customers who know me, they'll say, "Yeah, he's right. He doesn't change."
That's good. I think you've got obviously the way you speak about it. If someone's on the other end, they can see obviously how passionate you are, and and
Yeah,
like you said, you've obviously gained that all the experience you've got over the years
yeah,
allows you to on the spot to kind of tailor what you're saying
yeah,
to make it unique to that customer.
yeah. You can't fake sincerity,
Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah,
or enthusiasm. But one of the things I learned, this goes back years ago, is the things that always stuck with me, and that is, there's a saying that passion never fails.
mm,
And as long as you're passionate about something, which I am, because
yeah,
it's so disruptive, it's not a commodity product. It's very
yeah,
disruptive to the traditional or historical bottlenecks that were impeding value from software historically to get to the end users, to get to the objective. We're disrupting that. And I'm passionate about it, not because it's great technology, but
yeah,
because I used it. I saw what happened. So
yeah,
when I say, hey, 5x is development speed is real, I can back it up because I know, because
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I know how it works. So I'm
yeah,
trying to let customers know this is how to work. And my passion's based upon my own experiences with the platform.
yeah. And also, like you said, that it's all over the website with the stories from the customers as well.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
they don't believe you, they could check out the website
Yeah.
definitely.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's always the story behind the story.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and all those success stories, there's probably 2 dozen I know really
Yeah,
well. And
yeah.
when I reference them for a customer, I'll say, let me tell you what they learned from the process.
Yeah,
That's not
yeah,
in the story itself. But
yeah,
that's what customers love,
yeah,
is
yeah,
what
yeah,
did they go through? What did they learn? What were the challenges? And it's always funny to think
yeah, yeah,
sometimes what they went through. So,
yeah. And just a final question, what's, any kind of, goals or personal aspirations for, the next year or so for yourself?
oh, I have not thought about that. I I love working with customers, and I hope in the next 2 years that I continue to do so on a regular basis, and help them succeed in driving value through the platform organizationally and creating increasing capabilities to help customers do that on people and process. So I enjoy working with customers, large, small. It's the same fundamentals of
Yeah.
scaling. I just hope to continue to be able to do that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me.
Yes, I
It was
enjoyed
really
it.
good to have you on, and we only met a few months ago, so it's good
I
to
know.
really,
Yeah.
I've actually still got the business card you gave me from your wallet in Denver.
Old school business
I'm like,
card.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah,
the only business card that was given to me in Denver, so I'm happy.
I
Yeah,
know.
so I've kept it.
That's right. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I still have my business cards.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time, Mark.
Yeah, I enjoyed
And
it very
maybe
much. And
I
thank
think
you for
it'd
the
be good to,
invitation. And I was
yeah, no
shocked when
worries.
you asked me.
No, no, I thought, and it was mainly because obviously when I spoke to you and the way you spoke, straight away I thought he would be really good to
Yeah,
get on, so, and like you said, because of the way you feel about the platform, I think it definitely comes across. And what we're trying to do is create awareness. That's what we're trying
yeah,
to do with the
yeah,
podcast. And not just customers, but developers as well to,
yeah.
think about it. It's free to download and try. So, and if they hear people like you, then maybe that, if we can convert one, then we've done a job.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So if I mean, I know you have a large following on your podcast and LinkedIn, so I'm always available for anybody for any questions.
Appreciate it. And maybe, in the future we'll speak again, to, once kind of things
Yeah,
have evolved, maybe when ODC's out and things like that, a bit more,
yeah.
we can, I think it'd be good to speak again in the future. And
If
um
there's parts of this conversation
yeah,
that people want to drill down on,
yeah.
then maybe we could take that one
Yeah, yeah,
subject as a
definitely. Yeah,
follow-up.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. All right.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.